let's jump in. Hello everyone, I'm Natalie Hall from CryptoUK, and I'd like to welcome you all to today's webinar. The public narrative around the Web3 industry's environmental sustainability and its ESG impact is in general so often quite negative. However, as the UK's Digital Assets Trade Association, we know that in reality, many of our member firms and industry participants are working hard to deliver innovative and impactful programs in this space. One fantastic example of this is our member Zumo, who since their inception have provided solutions that benefit both people and the planet. So I'm really delighted to be joined by their environmental advisor, Kirsteen and Jessica Stickland, Head of Development at WasteAid, to explore approaches to starting, embedding and scaling sustainable practices into your business. Our panelists will also discuss how to ensure your enterprise is not only protected against evolving environmental challenges, but also excels in the competitive market. Before I hand over to Kirsteen and Jessica, a little bit of housekeeping. Please do use the Q&A function to ask questions as we go along, and our panelists will try and address as many of them as possible. On Monday, we will circulate the recording of this webinar. So obviously the webinar is being recorded to all participants, together with the panelists' contact details should you wish to continue conversations after the fact. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Kirsteen.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Natalie. Let me just share my screen here and bring my slides up. Okay, can we see this? Yes.
Yes.
Okay, hi everybody. I'm Kirsteen Harrison. I'm an environmental advisor to Zumo, and we are a blockchain technology company. We work with financial institutions and enterprise companies to embed crypto as a solution for them. And we've been really active in our sustainability journey really since the inception of the company. So what I was hoping to do today was just share a little bit about our learnings, but maybe some wider learnings in terms of implementing a sustainability strategy. And if your business already has one, which may well be the case, this is still very relevant because it provides a number of check-in points in terms of kind of sanity checking your existing strategy and seeing if it's getting you to where you need to go. So sorry, I'm not quite managing to change slides. Here we go. So I will start off with us in the crypto sector and some of the challenges that we face. I will then talk about the kind of frameworks that we might build a sustainability strategy around, and then some tips in terms of aligning sustainability requirements with your own business strategy. But then very importantly, I want to pass over to Jessica at the end, because one of the key things that we've done in Zumo is have a fantastic charity partnership with WasteAid, which I think that we've got a lot to share about the benefits that brought us. And so Jessica's going to talk a bit about the fantastic work that they do. We'll do Q&A at the end, but what I would say is if you've got questions about what I'm saying, if some of it doesn't make sense, or if you need me to elaborate on anything, rather than waiting for the end, if you put that into the chat, and Natalie, if you want to interrupt me at any point, then please do, just so that you know, so that things are clear to everybody. So that's the plan. So firstly, then, the sustainability imperative in crypto. I think it's fair to say, as a sector, we are different from many other sectors. I think we face unique challenges, but we also have unique opportunities. And so, you know, let's just start with a challenge. Within crypto, I think over the past few years, we've probably suffered a bit of a negative headline issue. We've had some fairly negative mainstream media coverage, probably tempered with not very helpful responses from us as a sector internally. And I think we've really moved on quite a lot from that now. We're beginning to see the emergence of some fantastic industry groups in the crypto sector that are really trying to move this agenda forward, coupled with some really great guidance as well. So the challenge is definitely kind of moving along, but predominantly in terms of our own sustainability impact or environmental impact, we're dealing with electricity consumption as our main issue. And certainly that's the case in terms of proof of work cryptocurrencies, and Bitcoin in particular uses something like 0.5% of the world's electricity consumption. So we believe that that is a challenge that we need to address as a sector. Yes, there's lots of comparisons that you can pitch crypto against other sectors and see how relatively bad or relatively good we are against others. But the fact is, we all need to get to net zero. Every company, every business needs to do that. And so our focus in Zumo has been on the climate side of things, but our sustainability strategy encompasses much more than that. So, you know, we face a number of challenges, but electricity consumption, I think, is really the main one. But coupled with the challenges we face are some opportunities as well. And I believe we've got a double opportunity, which I just want to talk about just now. So firstly, in relation to the electricity consumption point, I work actually across a number of different sectors. I don't just work in cryptocurrency, and it gives you a bit of a bird's eye view of what's going on elsewhere. I see us as being really quite fortunate within the crypto space that our main environmental impact comes through electricity consumption, because technologically we actually know what to do with that. So the technology is there in terms of solar turbines, wind turbines, solar panels, etc., to transition to renewable electricity, and actually the same cannot be said of many other sectors. So things like aviation, shipping, chemicals, cement, all these other sectors, the technology is not yet where we need it to be. So that puts us on a really, really great footing in the crypto space, that we have the technology, and that allows us to act more quickly than many other sectors are able to. And actually, if we do all collectively do that, we believe at Zumo that we can significantly scale the demand for renewables globally. But the other opportunity, which may not be as kind of obvious as that one, is that as a sector, we're basically a brand new sector. We have evolved very rapidly, and we are full of innovative, young, entrepreneurial people. We know how to take risks. We know how to take calculated risks. And these are exactly the skill sets that we need to move towards a more sustainable future. So we have exactly the right mindset and people to be able to move it forward. And so that is part of the huge opportunity I see within this sector to develop really, really impactful sustainability strategies. We said on the kind of overview of this webinar, we spoke about the opportunity and the competitive advantage, and I want to talk about that for just a minute. But actually, I don't want to big that up too much, because I think we've got a really short window of time that these things are opportunities, and actually we're beginning to see that not having a coherent sustainability strategy is a huge business risk. So you can look at it in the positive way of, well, this is a huge opportunity for us, but I think the converse to that is, if businesses don't adopt strategic sustainability strategies and have it embedded at all levels of the company, then very soon that will be a huge risk to them. So in terms of the opportunity side of things, something that we've been very aware of at Zumo is that actually our work on sustainability, crypto decarbonisation, the partnership that we have with WasteAid actually is a huge plus in terms of recruiting and retaining the best talent. We've been told at a number of interviews that the work we do on sustainability is actually a large part of why people want to join our company. And so conversely, what we're seeing is that actually the younger generations are leaving companies that don't have the kind of sustainability principles that they want to work with in their day jobs. So attracting and retaining talent is currently a huge opportunity. Competitor advantages too. Later on, I'll talk about some of the disclosure requirements and regulations that are coming down the line. And I think having the foresight to see what these are, to plan for them, and to see what client requirements might be in relation to those is definitely a competitive advantage. But because of the fast-paced way in which that environment is moving, as I say, it will soon become a risk if that isn't already on a company's radar. And something that those of you that work in sustainability will be aware of, but I suspect many of you who don't work in sustainability will not be aware of, is the rise of greenwashing. And in the UK, we have the Green Claims Code, and the Advertising Standards Authority also have very clear greenwashing guidance now. The FCA is going to be issuing its own greenwashing guidance, and it is surprisingly easy to greenwash without doing so intentionally. We now need to provide, for example, a lot of context around the claims that we need. We need to qualify what we mean by certain terms. If we're using a term like net zero or decarbonised, what does that mean to us as a company, and how are we applying it? So all of this is required now in greenwashing, and that is moving forward at pace. So as I say, currently a big opportunity to really shine and integrate a fantastic strategy, but soon a big risk of not having done that for companies that are not moving in that direction. So that, I guess, is the kind of background to us in the crypto sector and where we are and where I believe the opportunity is and where we need to get to. But what I thought might be helpful now is to talk more broadly about implementing a sustainability strategy, or perhaps those sanity checks if you do already have a sustainability strategy in place. And in the next section, I'll provide some tools and tips in order to do that. So there's two slides here, both of which have got a lot of substance in them, and I will be limited in terms of how much I can talk in depth just because of time. Firstly, I would say that it's really important to have some sort of visibility as to the kind of disclosure requirements that either are in place currently, but more importantly, are coming down the line at us. So there are, and I've tried in this slide to provide a little bit of structure around what these different names and acronyms are, some of which will probably be familiar to you and others less so. There are various disclosure frameworks that have been in place for quite some time. So CDP is a carbon disclosure framework, which, if you haven't heard of it now, I suspect that in the next few years, you might find that clients are asking you to disclose via CDP. I can give one example of a company in the FinTech world, which had no supply chain requests to report through CDP, and last year then received 5 requests. So a lot of this is coming down very quickly through the supply chain. And others disclosures would be things like TCFD, Global Reporting Initiative, and very recently launched the ISSB as well, which is the kind of global standards accounting, sustainability accounting framework. So we'll see a lot of movement in terms of requirements for disclosures. There are a number of commitments that companies may or may not choose to sign up to, but again, supply chain pressure means that often there is a request from key clients to sign up, for example, to have a science-based target. And from a regulatory perspective as well, there's a lot coming down the line, not just within the kind of crypto and digital asset space, but for businesses in general. So within the EU, we obviously have MiCA, and there is a requirement for sustainability disclosures in MiCA that's just being consulted on at the moment. So that will directly affect all of us in the crypto space. Kind of above that and applicable to many different kinds of organisation is something called CSRD, which is the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive. Now, you don't need to remember all those acronyms at all, but all I'm trying to do on this slide is show what is coming down the line. And if these things don't directly affect your business through the supply chain, you will undoubtedly be asked to report more than may currently be the case because of the requirements that these are placing on bigger companies and clients in your supply chain. So what I would really, really encourage is to do a little bit of a check-in and sanity check on what is coming down the line, how that maps to your business requirements, and how you might keep abreast with how this affects you in the future, because over the coming years there will be increasing requirements there. So just a little bit of advice on kind of mapping sustainability requirements against disclosure requirements. And my next bit of advice, which is a bit more fun actually than the sustainability disclosure side of things, is to do some mapping against the Sustainable Development Goals. If you haven't already, lots of companies start off by doing mapping against the Sustainable Development Goals. And it can be a fantastic way of involving lots of different stakeholders and lots of different people in your company, because the Sustainable Development Goals cover so many aspects of sustainability, a lot to do with social justice, a lot to do with governance, as well as the environmental side of things. And so, for example, one of the things that we've done in Zumo is we have mapped against each of these Sustainable Development Goals where we think we can have greatest impact, where we're already having an impact, but where we believe we could have more impact. And then obviously through things like our partnership with WasteAid, that allows us to have greater impact too. And so some kind of mapping exercise is a really, really useful way of seeing where can you have maximum impact and where can you really kind of differentiate yourselves. So I would strongly advise some kind of mapping and periodically revisiting that too. So I think that's it. There's loads of kind of advice that we could give in terms of mapping a sustainability strategy, but that's really just a bit of a taster. Be aware of what's coming down the line and map more widely against the Sustainable Development Goals, I think, are really good starting points. but now are just some tools and tips really as to how you might want to do that. So this diagram is something that I use often, and honestly, I use it myself as a bit of a check-in with, are we doing the right thing and are we concentrating in the right places? Many companies, when they start to implement a sustainability strategy, will look at their direct impacts. So the immediate things that they do as a company, their company operations, their office activities, and they'll start to look at those things. But what I've tried to illustrate in this diagram is that that generally is quite a small part of a company's overall environmental impact or sustainability impact. And what's much more important is to then start to look at indirect impacts. So to start to look at supply chains and services that are provided to clients, things that are subcontracted out, the kind of partnerships that you have. And it's these indirect impacts where you can actually start to have a lot more well, that's where a lot of the negative impacts come in, but conversely, that's where you can have much more of a positive impact by looking to address those in a strategic and systematic way. But even outside of that, we have our own sphere of influence. Now, this will be different for every kind of company, depending on whether you're small or large, remote working, based in multiple locations, global, local, all these things will really affect what your sphere of influence is. But it's really interesting to look at it and say, well, where can you do good? Where can you have an impact in the world? And where are you inadvertently causing harm where you may not have thought that to be the case? So what can be done in the local community? What kind of influence can you have over clients and what clients are asking of you and the services that you provide to clients? What are your peers and the wider sector doing? What kind of charities or NGOs might you support or promote, like we're doing with WasteAid? And what are those kind of partnerships and collaborations that will allow you to do more in a more impactful way than it will just from acting alone from the company perspective? So personally, I come back to this kind of diagram quite often just to check in with myself and say, are we doing enough on the kind of sphere of influence, or are we focusing in on the here and now, which is what a lot of companies tend to do? So I'd encourage you to hold a picture like that in your head. The other thing that's really useful is to do some level of maturity mapping. This is something that I've used that I think is a really good way to do it. There's lots of other ways to do something like this, and it's a fantastic way to get stakeholders involved. You can get staff involved, you might want to get clients or peers involved. But the idea is to do some kind of mapping as to, well, where are we now? Are we literally starting out on this journey? We really don't know much, we're just starting out, and that's absolutely fine. Or maybe we've got a sustainability strategy in place that's been in place for some time, but we haven't really gone back and checked that it's still getting us to where we need to go and that we're moving quickly enough. Or that really we have something in place that is central to everything we do and very strategic. So check in with where you are now. Honestly, more often than not, businesses tend to have a kind of collection of initiatives happening, but and individually they're great, but perhaps they're not joined up in a strategy. So that may be the case in lots of companies. And then, so mapping out where you are now, but crucially mapping out where the ambition is as to where you want to get to, because I've put here purpose and passion as being the top, and that's certainly what we aspire to. But not every business will aspire to that, and it may be that you just want to be compliant and be safe and stay at that level. So knowing what that level of ambition is really important, and this is a really good way to get leadership teams involved as well and understand their level of ambition, because you can never, for example, deliver to purpose and passion level if the leadership really just want to stay compliant and then focus on the day job. So something like this is really, really useful, and that can go alongside materiality mapping as well, which is a really similar exercise involving lots of different stakeholders, but it really looks at, well, what are our main impacts as a company on the kind of ESG spectrum? What are the key things that we contribute to? What do we think are most significant, and what do our stakeholders think are most significant? And you can do a similar kind of mapping exercise there. So this is, I guess, bringing it back to a bit more of a concrete example. When I showed you that diagram about direct, indirect, and sphere of influence, the way that we have developed that further in Zumo is in our own net zero strategy. We've developed a kind of 3-pillar net zero strategy that attempts to address each of those 3 areas. So Pillar one is Zumo the company, that's us, our operations, if we're traveling to events, with our staff sitting working at home, the kind of carbon footprint that that generates. So pillar one just looks at Zumo the company and what the carbon footprint is of us. That is basically our direct impact, and that's that kind of small part of the diagram that's important to address but isn't really going to change the world. And then we've got pillar two, which is where it starts to get really interesting for me, at least, which is the cryptocurrencies and blockchains that we work with. So how do we have some kind of impact in terms of that? So first of all, how do we measure, quantify, apportion responsibility for that? And then how do we account for that? And the way we do it at Zumo is through the procurement of renewable electricity. But that to me is very much the kind of indirect impacts we don't have any control over. For example, the electricity consumption of the Bitcoin network at any one time, but we can indirectly affect our own carbon footprint because of that. And then pillar three is this sphere of influence. This is acknowledging that we as a company can only move so far without the industry also moving forwards. So it's about being part of appropriate working groups and things like that to try and kind of move the dial for others too, because when others move forward, that's when you really start to make progress as a sector. So that's just an example as to how we have put things together in Zumo. I won't go through this slide in depth, but I just wanted to share this sustainability journey, which I find this one of the more useful ones that I've ever worked with. No sustainability journey has got a very clear start point, and it certainly doesn't have a very clear end point, because the more you do, the more you realize there is to do. So sustainability journeys do not end, they just get kind of deeper and more mature. But a typical sustainability journey would be either to start your journey with what the vision is, and I also encourage you, if you already have a sustainability strategy in place, that this is a really good check-in. Is the vision now what it was 5 years ago, or does the vision need to become more kind of ambitious? And then, you know, the usual mapping, planning, the governance side of things is hugely important. How do you make sure not only that you're doing what you say you're going to do, but that you're keeping on track, and what you say you're going to do is actually what's needed now? Because as we know more about the sustainability imperative, as we know more about climate change, as we know more about the decline of biodiversity, actually the goals that we need to meet as businesses change, and they get more ambitious as time goes on. So you always need to be checking in against that. Making sure that staff are kind of upskilled to the point that they need to, training, making sure that they have support, celebrating success is a really important one. I think businesses don't do that enough, really celebrating achievements, and then evolving and iterating that process. So this has been really, really useful to me, and I hope that something similar will be useful to you too. Again, just to take it back to Zumo purely as an example, this is our sustainability journey, and some of it's been a lot more organic than the slide I've just shown you. But actually the important thing for me here is that when you go back to 2020, which was really not long after we were founded at all, one of the first things that we did was develop a charity partnership with WasteAid. And we've been really lucky that we have grown with that charity partnership. We've developed as a company while that charity partnership has been in place. And I think for us as a company, what that means is that it's actually a very central part of who we are. And for many companies that are already established and maybe looking to develop charity partnerships, it may end up that you have a slightly different relationship because it's not embedded from the start. But it's been so valuable to us, and really links to a lot of our further achievements that we've had since then. So that's the key point that I wanted to make in that slide. The other thing that we've done as part of our sustainability journey is when you start to look at that kind of sphere of influence and where you can support others to make change, we have developed a product, Oxygen, which basically allows us to work with others in the digital asset space to align their digital asset activity with net zero principles. So again, it's about kind of trying to extend influence and enabling others to make the changes that they want to make as well. So back to WasteAid. it's interesting because at the beginning of our journey, when we developed the charity partnership, because we were so early on our own journey, it probably wasn't that much of a strategic choice. They were a charity that we absolutely loved. And, you know, we know that we wanted to make it work. But as we've grown, and as the relationship with WasteAid has grown, the kind of strategic integration of that into our business and how we work has also grown too. And that's the bit that I really want to share with you, because the value that we have had from that as a company is actually something that I don't think we can put a finger on. I don't think we can quantify it. So in terms of how the charity partnership works for us, there's three key elements here that really help to build it into part of who we are. So firstly, because we're a blockchain company, we were very clear that we want to support the communities that blockchain has the greatest potential to benefit. And in my mind, that is the world's poorest communities. It's the unbanked. It's people who may live in parts of the world where bribery and corruption are a problem. And those are exactly the communities that WasteAid supports through the fantastic work that they do. Also, going back to the beginning of what I was saying about the challenges we face as a sector, because climate change is our most material impact, we want to make sure that the work we do is supporting communities that will feel the effects of climate change most. Our own net zero strategy looks to address our own carbon impact, but the net zero strategy itself doesn't do anything to look at building resilience in communities, looking at adaptation and things like that. And through the work with WasteAid, that is exactly what they do through the fantastic work that they do in the communities that they support. So it's a really key part of how we can have that wider influence. And also, very importantly for us, because we're fast growing, innovative and adventure seeking as a company, we really wanted to partner with a charity that was on a similar journey. And WasteAid was kind of quite a young charity when we started working with them, and I think probably have been on a not a dissimilar growth journey to us. So there's been a lot of synergy along the way. So my own experience shows that having this kind of alignment in terms of a shared, a shared vision and shared aims is really, really central to having a useful and purposeful charity partnership. In terms of the business benefits that it's brought us, I've just tried to put some of the biggest high-level ones here. Firstly, these are all photographs of 2 walks that we did in support of WasteAid all throughout Edinburgh over the last couple of years, and we have always tagged these walks onto the end of things like our Christmas get-together. So it's been a really, really good way to do further team building and get key people together from the team to spend time maybe with others within Zumo that they wouldn't spend time with. We've had really, really high levels of staff engagement through a lot of the fundraising activities that we have done. Not only have we got people together to do group activities like this, but for example, during lockdown, people got their families involved in doing fundraising activities, and we sent kind of videos of that to each other so that we could see what everybody's fundraising efforts were. It's really helped to reinforce the company values, and it continues to help to reinforce our company values. And I believe that as of now, over the last 3 years, we have raised either directly or indirectly about £33,000 for WasteAid. So it's really been a valuable thing for us to do as a company too. So I'm going to pass over to Jessica, because I really want you to hear about WasteAid and the benefits of having a partnership like that. But I just want to leave you with a question, and I would really advise that you revisit this question. It's a really useful thing to be asking yourself. Fundamentally, is the world a better place because your company is in it? And I honestly don't think many of us can answer yes to that yet. So we need to be working towards making the world a better place because our businesses are in it. But I think that is me finished. So let me shall I stop sharing now, Jessica, and let you share?
Yes, thank you. I will give it a go. Right, thanks so much for that introduction and for that really helpful presentation, making notes. Let me just see if this is working. Hang on, why am I not seeing anything? Why are my notes not coming up? Let's try again. There we go. Is that working for you guys? Can you see that?
Yes.
Thank you so much. So thanks so much, Kirsteen. That was really, really helpful. And yeah, thanks to Zumo for the last 3 years. It's been absolutely wonderful partnering with you. And as you can see, the benefits to that really do go beyond money raised, but it's absolutely fantastic amount that they've raised too. So I'm Jessica Stickland. My role at WasteAid is Head of Development. So I'm basically responsible for raising funds and looking after our corporate partners, such as Zumo. And thanks so much for having me and for hearing a little bit here today about WasteAid and what we do. I'm just going to run through a few slides to introduce you to what we're all about and why we exist and the benefits of partnership from our perspective and hopefully how it could work for you guys too. So firstly, just to cover the kind of problem at hand, there are huge issues globally with mismanaged waste, which causes environmental degradation and pollution. There's actually, 1 in 3 people globally, and that's the majority in the global south, literally have no choice but to burn or openly dump their waste. They're not getting a weekly rubbish or recycling collection. And the climate impact of burning rubbish is estimated to be up to 3 times the greenhouse gas emissions as aviation, which is quite a shocking figure, but it's harder to measure, so it gets a lot less kind of coverage and a lot less investment. And there's also huge impacts on people's health, as you can probably imagine, but especially for children, there's really high levels of stunting for children who are growing up amongst this. And respiratory disease, infectious disease like cholera and diarrhea are rife, caused by the stagnant water, caused by blocked drains and rivers. And as you can probably also imagine, marine litter, the plastic that's in our oceans starts on land, in the whole. And there's a lot of issues around, upstream communities who dump their rubbish into dry riverbeds. It's historically what they've done. And then when the rainy season comes, it travels all the way down towards the sea. And actually, if you look at that picture there, the chap with the black T-shirt there, he's actually stood on a river. That's a river in Douala, which is a place in Cameroon where we work. And that's so crowded with plastic that's come down from upstream communities. You can actually walk across it, which is pretty shocking. I actually see that blockage from Google Earth images as well. So it's pretty shocking, but you've got to imagine that these are communities where people don't have clean running water, so they don't have any option but to use plastic bottles, and there's no infrastructure to deal with the end life of that. So this is the situation that people are in, and that's really why WasteAid exists. That and the fact that there's also huge issues of poverty and a lack of opportunity for the most marginalised in the countries where we're working. You've got an estimated 21 million people working in the informal waste sector, plugging the gap with there not being formal waste collections. And these people know that there's an opportunity in waste. They can make money out of collecting and they can make decent livelihoods, but they do need support, especially to ensure that what they do is safe and also respected. There's a lot of stigma in collecting waste in these communities. And what these guys are doing is making their local communities cleaner and healthier. So we feel like they deserve that respect. But, as I say, necessity is the mother of invention. So we know there's a lot of good work and entrepreneurship already taking place out there that just could benefit from that support, guidance and financial investment. And that's really where WasteAid comes in. So we're an international development, international and non-governmental organisation, a charity, fully funded by voluntary donations, a lot of company corporate support, which is fantastic. And we do also get, some institutional funding. We started life in 2015, started up by a group of concerned waste management professionals from the UK. So we're very young still, and we're a very agile organisation. We really can go to where the need is greatest and we kind of where the funding is, to be honest. So it enables us to be very flexible in our approach. We don't have a one-size-fits-all solution that we just implement. We really do listen to the communities where we work and work out what's going to be the best approach for them. We've trebled in size in the last 3 years, thanks to support from the likes of Zumo, and so we're looking at around 1 million turnover each year now, which is we hope to be able to keep going. And we've delivered programs in 9 countries around Asia and Africa. I thought I'd just introduce our work a little bit, or just bring it to life with a story about one of the waste pickers that we met out in Gambia. And he's very representative of the many who work in the informal sector around the world. So, this is the Gambia. It's very much known as a winter sun tourist destination, but it's actually really, really poor and it's tiny. It's one of the poorest countries in Africa. It rates 172 out of 189 countries in the Human Development Index. And it faces those same challenges as a lot of other countries in terms of population density, increasing urbanization, and a lack of waste collection system, which has meant that rivers, marine systems, they've got mangrove forests there that are heavily polluted and right onto the Atlantic Ocean. But this is Ali. He is in his 50s and he lives in the capital city of Gambia, and he collects waste to sustain a family. He's got 8 children. And he actually works in the main dump site in Bokote, and he works there 7 days a week from 9 in the morning until 8 p.m. every single day. And this is his collection point, and he actually gets paid about 10 pence for every kilo of plastic he's collected. So when our project manager Marie went and met him, he'd been collecting for about 3 weeks, and he had an equivalent of about £31 worth of plastic. That's what he'd been working so hard to get. So it does sort of demonstrate that kind of hand-to-mouth existence that a lot of these guys are dealing with. And what I thought was really pertinent is he just said to Marie that he doesn't want his kids to follow in his footsteps. He doesn't even want them to step foot in the dump site. He won't even let them bring him lunch. He is doing this purely so they can have a better life than he does. So what we're doing in the Gambia to help Ali and many of the collectors like him is we're actually working with a local plastic recycling company that has been set up with some investment that we supplied them. We're then working with the local communities in the area to create collection points and train the local communities on why it's important to collect and segregate their waste. So Ali now has more collection points and a dedicated end market to help him create a better livelihood. So I think that's just a nice example of the kind of work we do. Excuse me. Sorry, I've got a bit of a cough, so you just have to excuse me while I have a little drink. So that's what we're all about, basically. We're helping communities who are impacted by the dangers of harmful waste, and we're supporting people who are working in that informal sector, as we know there's many of them, to move up the value chain and basically just make a better living for themselves and help themselves out of poverty, basically by using waste as a resource, creating circular economy initiatives, because if materials can be kept from being wasted in the first place, people can use it as a resource and stop it from harming health and the environment, and as a way to lift themselves from poverty. So we do this by creating training programs for people working in the informal sector. And we're also looking for and supporting the many innovators and entrepreneurs who are already coming up with great ideas to tackle the kind of problematic waste streams where they live. We provide support and financial help to help fast track those local solutions so that change can happen at pace. And we work to scale and replicate those tried and tested solutions. If it's working in one area, then we can look to take it to another area and help people there too. So this is just a little bit about the impact that we've had. So since 2020, we have helped directly over 150,000 people. And last year we worked we had 14 programs in 6 countries. We're actually just about to launch a new impact report. So do follow us on social media and you'll see that soon. But that shows that this year our projects have also saved the equivalent CO2 as avoiding driving 37 times around the Earth's equator, which is quite a fun statistic. And I'm quite looking forward to making a new infographic with that in it. And then just before I move on to kind of partnership benefits from our perspective, I just wanted to share this little note from another one of our project participants. This is a lady known as Mama Pasto, and she was one of the first people to take part in our training program in Cameroon. And she's now gone on to train other young people to collect and make money from plastics in her community. As she says, taking part in the programme has meant that this is the first year that none of her 5 children have had to be taken out of school. She's able to put them all through school for the first time ever, which I just think really shows how waste management and recycling is more than about the environment. Although Mama Pasto's team have actually collected over 60, 70 tonnes of plastic so far this year, but it's really a tool for sustainable development, and it improves communities and livelihoods by doing so, by improving the waste management. Excuse me. So just onto the partnership model, sort of picking up from what Kirsteen was saying, and I think I've cut off a picture of that duck there, but I love those pictures. So how partnerships with the business community makes a difference to communities impacted by harmful waste. So very much at WasteAid, we're about understanding what our partners are interested in, understanding the alignment, and we put this front and centre within that partnership. So whether the company's objective is to bring staff together, fundraising towards a common goal, which is something getting even more, important as our workforces become more kind of disparate and remote, or whether you want to be seen by clients and customers to be impacting positively on climate change or marine plastic pollution or improving people's livelihoods. More businesses want to be seen as being purpose-led and being a force for good in the world, and not just because that is the right thing to do, but because it helps to attract and retain a positive workforce. And there's also growing evidence that purpose-driven companies are outperforming the competition. I know this is something that the Unilever brands are very much working on. Every brand is needing its own purpose. And as Kirsteen has shown us, purpose can be demonstrated brilliantly through charity partnerships, and that is in small companies as well as large companies. Zumo and WasteAid partnerships are a great example of how we've been able to, use a partnership to bring teams together for a common cause. And, again, as Kirsteen was saying, whilst you might not immediately connect blockchain with a charity that's dealing with kind of circular economy and waste, it doesn't take too much to kind of work it out that our joint purpose is all about supporting communities impacted the greatest by climate change. And those happen to be the same communities which potentially benefit from blockchain technology. It's all about supporting innovation and entrepreneurship. And as Kirsteen's also said, our organisations are growing together, which has been really fun. And how WasteAid goes about, meeting corporate objectives, we do cover a lot of stuff. We are looking at, everything from empowering women, helping with youth employment, reducing CO2 emissions, reducing, marine plastic. But we're also trying to deliver for what the corporates are telling us, that what they want to be doing is be able to deliver on impact. So we need to be able to kind of report on the impact that we're having to help with that, help them kind of make the ESG deliverables more visible. How can we involve staff? We have fundraising, activities and support, and we're very much, there to support that and kind of work on a one-on-one basis. Our work also delivers against many of those SDGs, and as you can see here, these are the ones that we've pulled out. We've done our mapping too, and these are ones we can confidently demonstrate that our work is delivering against. So partnering with a charity like WasteAid can help you, even as a small business, show how you are supporting delivery of these global goals and the goals that are important to you. This one's a bit of a shameless plug, I hope you don't mind, but we've been lucky enough to be selected to benefit from what's called the Big Give. Next week, it starts next Tuesday on the 28th of November. It's called the Big Give Christmas Challenge, and basically all donations made between the 28th of November and the 5th of December are match funded by a generous donor. And there's a QR code which takes you to the campaign page, which goes live on Tuesday midday. So it's just a great opportunity if you guys, anyone that are thinking about doing an office festive fundraiser, making a donation in lieu of sending a Christmas card or having a bake off, a bake sale in your office, anything like that. It just means that anything that's donated in that week will be match funded up to £10,000, which is pretty fantastic. And I believe, Emily, part of how Zumo love to support us is by sharing this kind of information. So if any of you guys want to look out for our posts and Emily's posts and share it in your networks, that will also make a huge difference. So thanks in advance. I hope you don't mind me making that plug. Big Give is also formulating one of the first efforts of our largest fundraising campaign to date as well. We've just launched an ambitious campaign to try and raise an additional £1 million in the next 2 years, which will be the end of 2025 will be our 10th anniversary, which is a bit daunting to say the least. But I think it's the right time for us to try and make a step change and try and get to that next stage of organisational growth. So do get in touch if you or your business or anyone might like to get involved. And I have left my contact details on this page, and I'm sure they'll be shared afterwards. So I hope you don't mind my plugging myself, plugging WasteAid there. But thank you all for listening, and thanks also to Kirsteen for putting us in touch with you all. That's the end for me.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, both of you. That was genuinely really, really fascinating. I'd like to invite the audience to submit any questions. We've already had one from one of the participants. So it's a little long, but I will try and read it out correctly. So when looking at resources of renewable energy for carbon insetting or offsetting, do you have a waterfall of preferences given the various sources have ESG dimensions as well? For example, wind farms have impact on birds and marine life, hydro projects have ecological impacts of their own, etc. It'd be great to hear what your thoughts on that.
Sorry, I just realised I was on mute. I love that question. I don't know who asked it, but it's a really, really good question, and yes, very well articulated. Yes, we do. And actually, one of the things that we have been working on in the background and continue to work on is what kind of renewable energy strategy can be the most impactful. Honestly, in the early days, we were just focused on getting something in place that allowed us to procure renewable electricity, because that in itself is hard enough if you're a small business. The renewable energy market is not that accessible except for the largest of players, hence why we've launched Oxygen, to make that accessible to others in the crypto space. But as part of that renewable energy strategy, what we've been looking at is where we can have most impact through procurement decisions, because as you say, not all sources of renewable energy are created equal. The location, it's all very well putting up a wind farm, but if it's put up in an area which is remote from communities that can use it and which doesn't get much wind, then it's not actually done that much good. So we do have an order of preference, which is to avoid large scale hydro that's been in place for some time, and to have a preference toward wind and solar. But even that in itself isn't as easy as saying all wind and solar is good and hydro isn't. So it's not clear cut. It needs to be looked at on a country by country and project by project basis. The other thing to say is that at the moment, the guidance around renewable energy procurement really needs to catch up with where the market is and where the environmental impact can be. And we find ourselves in a sticky place, as does every other company doing this, that the guidance has not moved fast enough for us to be fully compliant with the guidance and take the best approach. So, for example, what the guidance will say is that you should procure renewable close to the language is weird, but you should basically be procuring renewables in the area or the geography in which the electricity was used. Firstly, in the case of Bitcoin mining, you don't know where it was used. Secondly, that doesn't necessarily lead to the greatest impact because, for example, countries like the UK are already moving towards a greener grid, whereas some other countries need a lot more support in terms of getting renewable energy projects up and running. So that's a long answer, but basically there's a lot of things to consider, and I don't think we have got it exactly right yet. I think we're on a journey to get it right, along with many others, but we really need a lot more clarity in terms of guidance and in terms of things like early matching and where electricity can be procured from. And if you want to talk to me about it offline, I'm really happy to do that, because there's quite a lot more to be said on it.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, Kirsteen. And another one that's been said directly to me. So if you are a small business or a startup, as a lot of the participants in the crypto ecosystem are, and you don't have a lot of sort of spendable capital at that point in your journey, what is your top tip or tips for how to really get started? What should they focus on first?
I think looking at where you have impact and influence is key. So the mistake that a lot of companies make is to think, well, we've got 5 people, 3 of them are in an office, 2 of them working from home. As long as we switch the lights off at the end of the day, there's not much more we can do. That is the mistake. What we need to be doing now is considering what we do as a company and what our position is in the world and what we can have impact and influence over. Now, it doesn't need to be resource intensive. I do acknowledge that some of this requires some kind of understanding of sustainability issues, and in particular the slide I showed about sustainability disclosures, you do need some kind of knowledge to make sense of that. But this doesn't need to be something which is a cost, and it does not need to be something that is managed by a sustainability professional. You don't need to employ a sustainability director in order to do this. So if you are a small company, you don't have much in the way of resources, but you want to make a difference, I would bring everybody together for some kind of mapping exercise to say, what do we do? Fundamentally, what do we do? Who do we serve? What kind of clients do we work for? What kind of products are we building? Could we do something that has more impact? What are the negative impacts of what we're doing already? And then you begin that kind of mapping process in terms of what you can do. That would be my starting point. You may well, the further you go down that road, the more you realize that actually there's a lot more to do. I suspect that will take you on a bit of a journey that you might then look to see how you grow that more. But that would most certainly be my starting point, and that's a good team build, and it's no cost.
Fantastic. That's super helpful, Kirsteen. Thank you. Well, if there aren't any further questions, I think it is just left to me to say thank you, everyone, for joining us. Huge thanks to our speakers from Zumo and WasteAid, respectively. It really was fascinating, and I think very inspirational for those people who are either starting or scaling their sustainability journey. As I mentioned, the call has been recorded. It'll be sent to you on Monday, together with the contact information for both Kirsteen and Jessica. So please do get in touch if you want to discuss these items further. But beyond that, thank you very much on behalf of CryptoUK, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks,
Bye.
nice to meet you. Bye-bye.